Good evening. I'd like to call to order tonight's special meeting of Bellbrook City Council. The date is Friday, March 27th, 2020. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Pam, if you call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Havens.
Here.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen.
Here.
Mr. Greenwood. Mrs. Middlestetter.
Here.
Mr. Edwards.
Here.
Mayor Schweller.
Here. Thank you, Pam. Tonight is indeed a special meeting. All my years involved with Bellbrook Council, I have yet to have a meeting on a Friday night, but tonight is that night. As you can see, the council, 5 of us are connected and remotely through Zoom conferencing. I am in the City Hall with Pam and also with our city manager and cameraman Louie. So if we have any technical difficulties, please bear with us. To get started tonight, I want to reassure our citizens that as your mayor, the council and city staff have continuously monitored the increasing levels of concern and efforts to control the spread of the coronavirus through local, regional, and state resources. The health and safety of our residents and employees is paramount to ensuring there is only minimal disruption to the delivery of essential city services. The governor and the health commissioner have issued orders which escalate the level of social distancing and precautionary measures by closing additional facilities throughout the state. You should be aware of the following measures taken by the city of Bellbrook. Number 1, the Bellbrook Museum will be closed until further notice. Number 2, all city buildings are closed to the public until further notice. Number 3, no Bellbrook water customer will have their services disconnected unless absolutely necessary to make a repair. These measures will continue until we receive further guidance from the governor's office. Our police, fire, and service department employees will continue to provide the essential services which you have consistently expected from them. Where possible, we are minimizing non-essential services and working remotely to the extent we can. Rest assured, we are here to serve you, our citizens, and should you have any emergency situation, don't hesitate to call 911 as you normally would do. Please look out for those in our community who are elderly and in the higher risk groups. Direct them to the links found on the City of Bellbrook website for the WHO, the CDC, the Ohio Department of Health, and our Resource Center for additional information. Please encourage them to limit their exposure by all suggested means, stay home as much as possible, and limit outings only to essential needs. If you know of the elderly person in the community that needs help, please reach out to help if you can or coordinate with your neighbors or friends to provide assistance. Tonight, your council meeting is partially in person and partially remote via Zoom conferencing. We are here to meet on a resolution to vote on the appointment of council to fill the seat vacated by Tim Taylor. Tonight's special meeting is in compliance with the guidance issued by the Ohio General Assembly, signed into law today. In this regard, I'd like to thank Representative Rick Prowlis for keeping us in the loop as this legislation moved through the Ohio House and Senate. I also want to make the citizens aware that upon the recommendation of city staff and legal counsel, I declared a state of emergency for the city of Bellbrook this past Monday, March 23rd. My intention in declaring the state of emergency is not to induce panic, but rather to make sure the city of Bellbrook is properly positioned for FEMA funding should the opportunity present itself. The declaration has been posted to the city website and also it's on our Facebook page. Our resolution tonight deals with the damage caused by the rain a week ago today, which ultimately collapsed the bridge on North Bellevue. We'd like to begin the process of preparing the engineering parameters of the project to prepare the bid framework for the competitive bid process to begin. The city manager has spending authority of up to $50,000. While we don't expect the preliminary engineering to exceed her limits, we want to be very transparent as to how the process will move forward. Regarding filling the council seat, our charter requires we must take action to appoint a new member to council within 60 days of a council member departure. That date is tomorrow, March 28th. Should we miss the date, our charter requires the city of Bellbrook to hold a special election, which would be an expense the city does not need to incur. We will vote for a new member tonight. In concluding the mayor's announcements for this evening, I know the coronavirus pandemic has added undue financial hardship to members of our community, I ask that you remember we, the people of Bellbrook, remain small town friendly. We are there for each other, and we willingly reach out to help one another. Your city staff, police, fire, and service departments will continue to provide services at the levels you've grown to respect. I will continue to work with our city manager to monitor events of significance to Bellbrook. Again, continue to reach out to city staff as you normally would. We are a tight-knit community and we'll get through this. Please continue to monitor the city website for further guidance and information. Thank you and stay healthy, Bellbrook. Does any member of council have any comments they wish to add?
None, Mayor.
None.
Only that I'm having trouble hearing the mayor, and I can hear everybody else really well.
I think that if everybody mutes until it's their turn to talk, it will likely reduce some of that background noise and give the opportunity for anybody speaking in City Hall to be heard. So if everybody could just mute until they need to speak, that would probably help.
Can everybody hear me now?
I hear you loud and clear. That didn't help for me.
Forrest, can you mute yours?
Should we move over, maybe swing over and see if we can?
Yeah, I mean, you guys need to be probably closer to that.
Is this any better now, Ernie?
Maybe a little bit. It just earlier I could hear everybody very well, and I feel like I can't hear you very well. So
Okay.
I can make it by. It's just I'm worried about the recording not being loud enough.
Ernie, Louis, you're capturing the recording now?
Okay.
Okay, Louis in chambers and has it recorded for the TV airing.
I think everybody muting should help because
Okay.
there was a lot of feedback coming from the phone.
Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is our selection of our new council member. This is for a term ending December 31st, 2023. We had 6 applicants in the process. City Council interviewed each one of the 6 applicants and basically asked each one of them the same. I think we had 5 questions, and we went through the same process with each one of them, so we treat them all very fairly and very consistently. And as I said before, we need to make the selection of our newest member tonight. Otherwise, we'll be forced to hold a special election, which is, again, an expense the city does not need to incur. That being the case, this is an open election. I will ask the members of council to please provide any nominations. Each nomination will be forwarded by a second, and we will have an open vote of all those nominated that are on the platform. At this time, I open the floor for nominations.
Yes, Mayor. I would like to nominate Donna Seeger-Lawson.
Thank you. Can we have a second? Do we have a second for that nomination, or? Can we have another nomination, please?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to nominate T.J. Hoke.
Okay, we have a nomination for T.J. Hoke. Do we have a second for that nomination?
I'll second it.
Do we have any further nominations? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So we have no further nominations? And we had no second for Donna Seeger-Lawson? Is that correct? Did I miss someone?
I don't think so.
Everybody okay with that? That being the case, the only nomination we have is T.J. Hoke. At this time, we'll have the
Call the
clerk
vote.
call the roll, please.
All right, a nomination was made by Mr. Havens to nominate TJ Hoke to the open council seat. This was seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Mr. Havens? Mr. Havens, did you hear me? Can you sit? Yeah. I'm asking for your vote.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
No.
Mayor Schwaller?
Yes.
Greenwood?
Oh, sorry. Mr. Greenwood?
You have to unmute your speaker, Forrest.
Yeah, he's frozen. Shoot, I wonder if he lost internet connection.
Forrest, are you out there?
Yep. All right.
We should call a vote again.
Yeah, we'll have to call it again. Let me reach out to Mr. Greenwood and see if I can.
He was gonna read the resolution too, in his, because Nick's internet was going in and out,
Oh, well, let me get,
and his internet was
Forrest.
pretty strong.
My internet has not.
You just cut out, Nick.
hey, Forrest, we've lost you online here.
I can hear you, but I can't find the unmute button.
Well, it doesn't look like it looks like your picture is frozen also.
Yeah,
Can you try exiting the meeting and come back in?
yeah, I'll try.
Okay, thank you.
Please bear with us momentarily.
What do we wanna do about the resolution being read then? If Forrest is gonna go in and out and Nick's internet's not doing so hot.
We're trying to bring Forrest back into the meeting.
We could, Elaine could read it, Dr. Dave, anyone can read it,
Yeah.
so. Anyone whose internet is.
But somebody's gotta have it in front of them right now though, you know what I mean? 'Cause it's the next.
I can probably do it. And I just have a question. This afternoon, we were able to see you, Melissa, and see
Oh.
Pam. I'm just seeing your stock photo in two windows right now.
Yeah, because I have my phone laying on the desk so that it can be near everybody, so that you guys can hear everybody. We thought it might be more important for you guys to hear us rather than see.
Okay. And if you need the resolution read, I've got.
Okay, he muted himself, but okay, that would be great, Dr. Dave, if you could do
Yeah.
that.
When we get to that point.
Okay, here we go.
All right, Forrest is back on.
It says connecting to audio.
It's connecting, so.
Okay. Hey, Forrest, can you test that to make sure we can hear? It doesn't say that he's muted. Oh, shoot.
Where'd he go? This is why you don't normally hold meetings. It's like, it's
Tough.
difficult.
Well, you're just reliant on technology and.
Oh, it's going through to the microphone. Can you tell if he's,
Okay, here he comes.
okay.
Hey, Forrest, can you say something so we can make sure we can hear?
Hey, Forrest, can you say something?
I think he's froze again.
Yeah, that's the same picture we had earlier this afternoon.
Robert?
She muted it.
Can we hook Forrest in on the telephone? Can he call one of our numbers and speaker? Can we put in speakerphone or?
I mean, we don't, I mean, we can't make this work, so I'd say that we're gonna have to.
Let's try to see.
Well, he just,
There he
okay,
is.
well.
Maybe?
There he went. Yeah, I would just call
Okay,
him
you
and
want
put
me to
him on
call him?
speaker.
Okay.
Okay, Pam's gonna call Forrest and just
Yeah.
put him on speaker.
We'll go through the whole vote again to make sure we have it all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Make sure.
Absolutely, we'll start that again. Hi, Forrest, we're gonna just go ahead and put you on speaker on my phone, and so we'll just hear you for the rest of the meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, let me put you on speaker. All right, can you hear us?
Yes.
Can everyone else hear us? Show of hands.
Yes.
Okay. We open the floor for nominations for the council seat vacated by Tim Taylor. We had a nomination by Nick Edwards for Donna Singer Lawson. We did not have a second. We had a nomination by Ernie Havens for TJ Hoke, seconded by Elaine Middlestetter. Forrest, were you able to hear those proceedings?
I was.
So you're okay with where we're at then?
Yes.
Okay. So now we have only one candidate running for the seat, which is TJ Hoke. So at this time, I'll ask Pam to call the roll.
All right. Mr. Edwards made a nomination of TJ Hoke to fill the,
Havens.
oh, excuse me, Mr. Havens made a nomination of TJ Hoke to fill the vacant city council seat. This was seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Mr. Havens,
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter,
Yes.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen,
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood,
Yes.
Mr. Edwards,
No.
Mayor Schweller.
Yes. Therefore, by a vote of 5-1, our newest member on city council will be TJ Hoke. Congratulations, TJ. I know you're not watching us right now, but hopefully we'll talk to you later on this evening. Thank you. Next, we have Resolution 2020-G. Who would like to read the resolution? Dr. David Van Veldhuizen?
I can do that, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right. City of Bellbrook, Ohio, resolution number 2020G. Just to make sure you can still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. A resolution by City Council authorizing the city manager to enter into a contractual agreement with LJB Incorporated for engineering and design services related to the collapse of a large culvert and roadway on North Bellevue Drive, north of Burl Drive, for an amount not to exceed $49,912. Whereas on the morning of March 20th, 2020, a large culvert and roadway on North Bellevue Drive, north of Burl Drive, collapsed and washed away due to heavy rainfall. And whereas there is extensive damage as a result of the culvert and roadway collapse, and that approximately 30 feet of roadway has been washed away, which has left an open trench down to the creek bed. And whereas the collapsed culvert and roadway have created a very hazardous condition for anyone who may be in that area, and whereas immediate action must be taken to repair the collapsed roadway and culvert in order to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, and whereas City Council believes it is imperative to empower the city manager to enter into a contract with LJB Incorporated for engineering and design services related to the repair of the collapsed roadway and culvert for an amount not to exceed $49,912 in order to facilitate the prompt reconstruction of the collapsed roadway. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves, Section 1, City Council hereby authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with LJB Incorporated for engineering and design services related to the reconstruction of the collapsed roadway and culvert on North Bellevue Drive, north of Burrell Drive, for an amount not to exceed $49,912. Section 2. And Pam, you need to change that, I believe, on the master, Section 2. This resolution shall take effect and be in full force from and after the date of its passage.
Okay, so just for clarification purposes, this is a resolution to allow me to, if everybody could just mute. Is everybody muted? Okay, we were just getting, it might have been feedback from the speaker. Okay. So just for clarification purposes, this is a resolution that is authorizing me to enter into a contract with LJB for the engineering, the preliminary engineering services that will identify a solution for the repair of North Bellevue Drive from the culvert and roadway collapse from March 20th. This preliminary engineering will allow us to be able to put together the specifications to be able to go out to bid for the actual construction of the project. So by charter and ordinance, my spending threshold is $50,000 without city council authorization. However, just in the effort of full transparency, like the mayor said, we were going to go ahead and put this resolution in front of City Council so that the public is very much aware of what we're doing in order to facilitate the repair of the roadway and the culvert. So what is attached to this resolution is 21 pages worth of documentation that outlines all that LJB is going to be doing for the city for the amount of $49,912. So there are 2 additional documents attached to LJB's cover that has the total on it, and those 2 estimates are incorporated into that $49,000 figure. So there is the $49,000 figure, which is all inclusive of the other estimates which were also attached to this document. So part of the reason for having this resolution on tonight and for council to allow me to go into contract is just in the essence of timeliness. If this resolution is passed tonight and I have authorization to proceed, we will be able to have surveyors on site the week of April 8th. And getting this project up and going as soon as possible is definitely important because based on the timeline that is outlined in the schedule of the first page of the LJB proposal, which is clearly labeled schedule, if they receive an authorization to proceed on Monday, this coming Monday, then they would have the preliminary engineering submittal and review on May 8th. They would have the final design submitted and reviewed on June 1st. And the construction documents complete to go out to bid on June 5th. So given the timeline that we would have to notice the bid and award construction, that's putting us to July at this point. And construction is likely to take 90 days at most. So we want to try to be as timely as possible given that schedule that was provided. It should also be noted that this $49,000 figure that is incorporated into this estimate for the preliminary engineering is what was described to me as a worst case scenario in terms of cost. It includes several design items that our engineer foresees could be needed but might not be needed. There's a proposal in here for geotechnical borings. Those might not be needed after the hydraulic study gives a recommendation of structure. Those borings might not be necessary, so that's a place that could potentially see savings. There's also some driveway work that is included, which also might not be needed if the elevation of the roadway remains the same. There is also a line for shop drawings from pre-tech that are included, which are normally part of construction, so that could possibly be reduced. But it is important to note that Possum Run is a FEMA studied stream, and so the hydraulic analysis is most certainly required on behalf of the city in order to ensure that we are going to be installing the appropriate structure, given that that's a FEMA studied stream. And it would also allow us to make sure that that it's going to withstand all the current environmental impacts that could happen. So that hydraulic study is very important for a number of different reasons. It's also going to provide quite a bit of background information that's going to be used to make the determination as to the structure. And I do think that it's also important just for everybody to notice, I went through and I highlighted on my copy that I made sure to stress to them, to LJB, that we want to make sure that whatever it is that is being proposed to be installed as a solution for this, that we are studying any impacts that are going to occur at the next culvert down, which is a crossing at Little Sugar Creek Road. So we want to make sure that whatever it is that we install is absolutely going to take Little Sugar Creek into consideration so that we're not creating more problems for ourselves down the road. So that is actually on, let's see, just to point it out to council and everybody else, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's page 8, I believe. The heading is stream cross sections. And it says that an additional cross section is needed at the upstream face of the bridge crossing at Little Sugar Creek for analysis of downstream impacts. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that we are very much going to look at whatever solution is recommended and how it will directly impact Little Sugar Creek Road and the next culvert down, which is near the vineyard. So I know that that's a lot of information, but it's a pretty comprehensive estimate, and again, it's the worst case scenario. We're hopeful that some of these items won't be needed. We definitely wanted to bring council the highest number in terms of possibility of cost versus a lower figure, and then have to come back and update that figure and it be a higher number. So this should not exceed the figure that is on this estimate.
Melissa, is it possible that the proposal would say for a fee not to exceed $49,912? Now it says for the lump sum fee of $49,912 on page 1 of the letter from LJB.
Okay, on theirs to update that.
Yeah, I'd prefer to just have it not to exceed $49,912.
Yeah.
I don't want them to do $30,000 of work and the bill's $49 because the contract says that. I
Yeah.
mean, what you said is what I'd like to see, a fee not
Yes.
to exceed.
Yes, I can update that
I don't know if it's a
before I
big deal or
sign.
not, but I think we would just do it initial and they ask them to initial and send back to us or whatever.
Yep, I can certainly do that. And again, LJB really worked hard to get this out to us. Our engineer that we work with, his name is Dan Hoying, and he's been excellent. The morning that this happened, Ryan actually contacted Dan, and he immediately sent out an engineer from Pretech who they subcontract out bridge and culvert work to, and that engineer had brought out a contractor just to kind of give us an initial look at what they thought we would need and what should happen and all of that stuff. So we met at 11 a.m. on Friday morning, the day of the collapse. So we were able to quickly respond on site with people that had quite a bit of knowledge about those types of structures and what we might need to replace it with. And so I feel good about the folks that we have working with us and finding a good solution for this issue that we have here.
And they'll also be commended for their quick response. Aside from Bellbrook Police identifying the road was torn out, ruined, when I got there, the guys from Vectren were there all set up and already digging to disconnect the gas line. So we had very quick response from Vectren and also from the engineering crew as well that morning, so it worked out well for us.
And it should also be noted that the sections of culvert, there were actually two 72-inch side-by-side pipes that were underneath of that roadway. And the force of the water blew those pipes out of place, which is what caused the roadway to collapse. And those pipes were blown downstream, and the service department, alongside with a contractor that had a piece of equipment that we did not, were able to get in, thanks to some of the property owners that lived adjacent to the creek, and they were able to get the pipes out so that they aren't going to cause any kind of a danger to anybody that gets down and into the creek. So they did a really good job of getting that out of there very quickly. So I'm thankful to the service department for coordinating that and making sure that those pipes are all removed. So
Very good, very good. Any comments of council? Let's start with Forest Greenwood, then we'll move through the folks on the Zoom conferencing.
I just want to make sure that all of our citizens, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
yeah.
Try again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that all of our citizens are aware that this will be a bidded contract. I know the Dayton Daily News had an article in there, and it indicated that it would not be, but I just want to make sure that everybody knows it is going to be bidded out.
It will be a competitive bid contract for us, yes.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that. And the other thing, are we going to have the engineering process come to council meetings and give us some updates where we can ask some questions?
We can certainly do that.
That would be helpful. That's all I have.
Thank you. Nick Edwards.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to commend our city manager and our service department and you, Mayor, for going out there. I think we reacted very quickly on this. It's unfortunate that just the way things work in the construction industry and bids is going to...
You're kind of fading out, Nick.
Fortunately, it's one of those streets that has another egress and egress out, so it may be a little bit of an inconvenience, but not totally landlocking somebody.
Absolutely, you're right. And again, thanks to our service department for being the first responder, so to speak, on the scene. Thank you, Nick. Dr. David Van Veldhuizen.
Thank you, Mayor. Like the others, was out there. The response was swift. It's very interesting to see a road that's just not there and what water can do. Beyond that, I echo Forrest's comment. I saw in the proposal that the contractor and any of their subs are going to have regular interaction. And I think that at least short reports frequently to council on what they're finding will speed the decision process along rather than a total download at the end. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Elaine.
I figure out how to unmute myself. I echo the sentiments to the city manager and the service department. Very quick response. I've heard nothing but praise on that. And I also like the idea of having interim reports as much as possible so that this can move along as quickly as possible, but not so fast that we miss something. So it's sounding good so far.
Very good, thank you. Councilman Havens.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. I agree. The city's response was very impressive. I visited the site as well. Was actually pretty perplexed that two 72-inch culvert pipes could not pass enough water to keep that bridge from flowing, and or the water from flowing underneath the bridge. I did notice there were some pretty big logs in front of the culvert concrete, so I do think that we should take a harder look at our streams management. Since I've been on council, I think we're looking at close to, well, let's just say multi-million dollars of need related to our streams. And I think that after looking at it, I think that one of the main reasons it blew was because there was a likely a lot of brush in front of it. So I would ask Melissa to talk with the service department and see if we can get some sort of program in place to maybe catch up on some stream maintenance if we are behind, and or stay on top of it so that hopefully something like this won't happen at another stream. With that said, I think 49,000 even at a top end is excessive. We're talking about more than 10% probably of the overall cost of a bridge just for design work. And I think other contractors that might be able to do the job might have a different opinion on how this may need to be done or designed, other than what LJB may recommend. So with the thought of, I don't necessarily think this is urgent to act on in an immediate standpoint. I just would propose to Melissa, what are our other options? Can we have contractors bid and provide their recommendations and then do their own engineering, and then have us decide based on that in as quick or maybe even more quickly of a manner? Just $49,000, even at the max, seems too much. So that's really all I have to say there. Definitely interested in some dialogue if you guys have thoughts on that.
Do you want to consider contacting another engineering firm to see if they want to give us a quote too, or?
I mean, I can.
Why don't we reach out to one other firm and we'll see once.
But possibly the people that would build the bridges likely have an engineering firm such as the PSI company that may be able to provide a different design. It might be not as expensive. Just curious. I don't see the rush to move quickly here. I don't think that road is super critical when it comes to, this certainly wasn't budgeted. Where's that money coming from?
So I will say that we have to have a hydraulic analysis done, and an engineer has to do that. With it being a FEMA studied stream, we have to have a hydraulic analysis done. So that's a big part of the cost with this. So what percentage of that, I'm not sure, but our engineer did tell me that the hydraulic analysis is a big driver behind the cost. So that's a cost that we're not going to be able to avoid, is that piece of it. So I can reach out to other engineers, but I think to reach out to a contractor, we have to make sure that there's a hydraulic analysis included in that, and an engineer has to do that.
I prefer we reach out to another contractor. I don't want to reach out to a construction firm yet until we have a firm plan as what the scope of the project is.
Could you elaborate a little bit on exactly what a hydraulic analysis is?
So I know that, now I'm not an engineer, and I could probably do a better job versus on the fly of responding to that, but basically what a hydraulic analysis does is it studies water movement, it studies the sources of the water, the environmental impacts on that stream. So basically it takes into consideration the water that's flowing through it to determine what type of structure is necessary to be able to withstand the flow and accomplish the goal of being stable as well. So again, I probably could do a better job of explaining a hydraulic analysis, but that's the simplest terms that I understand it to be, that I can convey at least.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
How did we figure out that that would be necessary?
Because it's a FEMA studied stream, so they have certain requirements that are going to going to be put into play in terms of selecting the structure that is going to be installed. So if we don't do a hydraulic analysis of this and we put in a structure that's not necessarily going to be able to meet those FEMA standards, we're the FEMA floodplain administrator and we would have that liability if that ever failed and caused problems. So we want to make sure that if we have, if whatever structure we put in, if we have a hydraulic analysis that's completed, then we can lean on that to say, this is why we built what we built. So if it were to ever fail, then we know that we gave it the best effort that we could to relieve the city of any liability that could come if we did not do it.
What you understand is hydraulic analysis is required as a FEMA stream.
It's FEMA required.
Where's that requirement written?
We can ask the engineers and
Yeah,
find out where it is. I don't know.
That's what's been
I'd like to
conveyed to
actually
me.
see the requirement if possible.
We can find that.
LJB has done a number of engineering studies for us. They have always been reasonable in their pricing. They have been responsive, and I'm perfectly happy to have them give us the engineering study. They will not. They've always been honest and above board and fully transparent with us. That's been our experience with them.
And I agree, Elaine. I mean, they've been good and they know our water, they know our streams.
Yes.
I'm sorry, who else is speaking?
I was, but you done, Mike?
Yes.
Well, I understand it's not probably one of our busier roads. I guess is it going to impact any service related or fire or police call times or anything like that?
I have not reached out to the police and fire department to figure out if, I mean, I have not researched that,
I think we need to look at that because, I mean, while it may not be urgent to us, it may be urgent to the people that live on that street and want their road fixed. And, you know, one of the things that we always talk about the city is that we pride ourselves on our service department, our roads, our snow removal. I mean, this is a large event, I understand that, but, you know, I don't want to rush through the process. I want to make sure that we have the right experts in there, but I also want to be sensitive to the fact that people are going to have to live with it for a while.
There are a lot of people who use that instead of, it takes some of the load off of Little Sugar Creek, because Little Sugar Creek and then Wilmington are the only two through streets, and that cuts through from Possum Run and that section there. So there's a lot of people that use it, and it really impacts the school buses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just food for thought.
Well, do we want to just table the motion for tonight?
I'm in favor of voting on it.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may, just a couple things. One, hearing that we have used these people before, that there is some level of trust with that company, is comforting. I mean, in normal times, maybe going out to a number of qualified companies that can do this work. I mean, there's another question. I don't know how many there are. There to me is some time issue to at least get a start on what we're dealing with.
I agree.
So that Melissa is maybe a quick discriminator of, yes, we've used them before, but how many companies are available to do this? What's their bandwidth? And, you know, if we're talking not to exceed this amount, if their preliminary figures are in that ballpark, to me, the using them in the past and your trust with their capability for this study is not a barrier. And then the other thing I wanted to say, Ernie, I thought I heard you say that this amount was more than 10% of the total project. Several projects that I've done or overseen with the Army Corps of Engineers, typically the planning is 10% of the project, or at least the proposed budget. You're budgeting 10% of what you think the total is going to be. So Melissa, that's really a question for you. Do we have any idea what this fix may cost? Has this happened before in other cities recently? You know, what are the estimates for what this total the total fix of the street's going to be.
So what was told to me on site on the morning of the 20th when it happened by the engineer and the contractor that were out there kind of giving us some advice, they said that if we were to build a structure that would be similarly constructed to the one on Clio, which is just the next roadway up, which is obviously a very large structure, and it would not need to be that wide because that stream is just a much wider stream up there at that point. But if we were to build a similar structure that would fit the width of our stream and the height that we need it to be for the roadway, that we would be looking at $400,000 to $500,000. Now that was just if I had to give you a guess, this is what I would say based on what is upstream and what we know that this needs to handle. That was the figure that was given to me. So obviously that's a very rough number, but that was.
We talked to Barry Tiffany and asked him.
Pardon me?
Could we find out from Barry Tiffany what they paid for that?
What they paid for that? Well, I mean, the engineer that was on site was the one that built the one that was upstream. So.
Yeah, we could still maybe call
Yeah,
Barry and see
I
if he
can
can
do
give us
that.
a number. He might
Yep,
tell
I
what
can do that.
what the hard number was.
But from those rough estimates, the cost that we're looking at is well within the ballpark of 10%. And planning and engineering is, if you don't have that done right, the rest of it you might as well throw away.
True.
I was considering those words. Melissa had shared that price information, $400,000 to $500,000 for that bridge. I looked at that bridge thinking that bridge is much larger than what we need for this area. So just notionally, my thoughts were going to hopeful of 300, 400,000, and that's where I was coming up with. 50,000 is a little more than 10%. I guess the other thing that just generally makes me suspicious, and I'm not trying to speak ill will, but anytime a business provides a quote that's just under the spending threshold of a particular person, just makes me suspicious in general.
We have no reason to be suspicious of this particular company.
That's fine. I'm not saying that we should. I share my experience.
But we have a lot of experience with them as well as a city for years.
I'd like to bring it back. I'd like to bring up a point about what was said in the paper that the Clio extension collected a lot more water from all the development. And that hasn't been too long ago. And what happened a week ago with the rains, you walked down a bridge, you had a flash flood on South Main Street. There was a lot of damage along the creekway. And I'm looking at this kind of like comprehensively from the Clio down to the Little Miami River. Is there something that needs to be done with the Clio development to maybe slow some of that down? Because I think we all know 2 and 4 inch rains are going to be more commonplace in the future. And I was looking at some of the banks where we've had a lot of washout. Some of it is getting a little bit closer to homes in that area. So I'm looking at this as a whole, like I say, from Clio down to the stream. This bridge is a small part of it. But as we know, and was explained in the paper, which had a lot of detail of what people said that day, it was brought up that extra flow of water had a lot to do with blowing that bridge out. So if we put a new bridge in, is a new one going to get blown out? Now, having said that, Miami Valley Regional Planning has some engineers and stuff that they could probably figure out how much flow in a certain area per inch of rain. That's probably documented somewhere. I'd kind of like to see some of that information.
I think that's what the hydraulic study is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly correct, Elaine.
In Forest One, go ahead.
May I suggest say that we have been hearing more and more from the folks, the Little Miami River folks, who said that the more we keep building, the faster the water runs off, which makes it run faster, puts more pressure and more force on the stream, on the water coming through, rather than letting it soak in. So every time something is built upstream, we get the end of it, because we're at the bottom end of the flow. We're the Little Miami River watershed. We're the lowest point in Greene County. So everything upstream flows to Bellbrook. And there have been a number of people who have told me that they notice more water in their yards and coming down the streets ever since the Cornerstone development and all that up in that area has been built. So it's definitely something we need to look at and consider. And we are going to have these bigger rains for at least some time. We're in that cycle of extreme weather. And they generally last around 20 years, I've been told. So don't take that as gospel, but that's my understanding. So, yeah, there is more water coming through. And it's coming through faster, which washes out banks. So,
And additionally, Elaine, what the Service Department employees may be aware of too is that a lot of trees are being washed into the stream.
yes.
And as the banks start to erode, we've had a lot of dead ash trees along that Possum Run, and a lot of those trees have contributed. They think possibly one of the trees got wedged in the culvert, and that's what caused the eruption to happen, but nobody watched it.
There's a lot of that on the streams throughout the city, so it is definitely something we need to look at. I agree that we need to get those cleaned up.
Okay,
I think
thanks.
that was our major culprit here, is that we had brush, trees that stopped the flow, and it had nowhere else to go except push the road through. There's even still an ash tree sitting across the bank in front of the concrete right now.
Mm-hmm. But if the trees and the brush slowed down the flow, I don't know, you need the super rush of the water to push the concrete out. I mean, that's a lot of force. So, and I'm no engineer.
Do we want further discussion on Resolution 2020-G? Do we want to table it, or where do we want to proceed?
I want to proceed.
I want to proceed.
Yeah, I want to proceed, Mayor. I believe it's better to make a decision and move forward than wait.
Okay. And keep in mind the fee, 49,912, it'll say a fee not to exceed, so hopefully that's the high end of their range, and we'll watch where they go.
Is Forrest still there, Cam?
Forrest, you still online?
Can I ask if we could at least have some feedback on whether or not those extra options are going to be enacted throughout? Is that a possibility? The things that might not be necessary?
We won't know that until we get into it. They put everything that could potentially be a part of the process into the estimate so that it's the worst case scenario. So
Will they give us the option not to exercise some of those things if we don't?
I mean, if they determine that they're necessary, I would think that we would take that recommendation and we would,
But if they give us an option, we'll deal with it.
yeah, I mean, if they gave us an option, we would absolutely deal with it, but
Okay.
we just kind of have to take it day by day with this.
Yeah. Seems to be the par for the course right now.
Yeah,
Day by day.
exactly.
I haven't been able to hear real good. I did hear something about tabling it. I personally like to see it tabled and have the actual engineer come in there and speak. to get some better ideas and hear something from them.
We have the engineer's report. I would think you can read it.
Well, it's a very high-level document, but it's not a full-end report, and he's not going to have a whole lot more information to share until he gets in the process, I wouldn't think.
Right.
Yeah. Forrest, could you hear that, or?
I did.
Okay, okay. Well, any more discussion? This time, let's go forward and see if we have a motion for Resolution 2020-G.
I'll make a motion to move forward resolution number 2020-G.
In a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
A motion was made by by Mr. Edwards to adopt Resolution 2020-G, a resolution by City Council authorizing the city manager to enter into a contractual agreement with LJB Inc. for engineering and design services related to the collapse of a large culvert and roadway on North Bellevue Drive, north of Barrel Drive, for an amount not to exceed $49,912. This was seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Havens?
No.
Dr. Van Veldhuizen?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
No.
Mayor Schwaller?
Yes.
Okay. The motion passed 4-2.
And just make that one change, Melissa,
Yes.
just add the letter here, because it says in the motion, just make sure that's consistent with this.
Will do.
Okay. So tonight's abbreviated meeting, the next item on the agenda is the city manager report.
Okay, so I'm just basically just going to touch on some of the city efforts related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The mayor outlined a number of those. We have dedicated web pages that there are actually 3 of them. There's one for city announcements, there's one for city services, and there's one for community resources. So if you hover over the resources tab at the very top of our web page, when it expands down, you will see the COVID-19 pages. So there are 3 of them. So the city announcements, that's very self-explanatory. Anything that we need to push out is pushed out there. City services, it just outlines basically the fact that the museum is closed, public buildings, some of the things that we have done and how it impacts our city services are listed there. We are still working to deliver all of our city services. At times we have reduced staffing, and staff is working telecommuting as much as possible, but we are still delivering all of our services as usual for the most part, given all of the current requirements and guidelines that have come down from the federal and state level. I am going to devote one of the pages to small business resources, just because I receive a lot of information on assistance for small businesses, and the Chamber of Commerce, their website has actually crashed, and so I had offered to share some of the resources that have been passed along to me for the small businesses, and I'm going to work on that at the beginning of next week. We just had a meeting this morning actually, and I'm gonna take care of that since I have a lot of that information. So board and council meetings are on hold. They will only occur to address essential agenda items. Obviously, let's see, water will not be disconnected for non-payment. We made that decision before it was actually mandated. And I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that there are scams circulated related to a number of different things. So just be cautious, especially as more people are on their computers, receiving emails as they relate to the pandemic. Just be very careful with what you're opening up. Be very careful of what attachments you open, or make sure that they're from a trusted source. If you are donating money to support any sort of organization or cause or anything related to any of this, just make sure that the sources are credible before you do anything like that. Just make sure that you're doing your research. I had an email that I'd sent out to, I think it was 6 or 7 people. It was the Lions Club, the Chamber, for Bellbrook, by Bellbrook, Bellbrook by Design. It was like 6 or 7 people, and within an hour, I was alerted by the Lions Club that my email address was spoofed, and communication went out soliciting eBay gift cards to a bunch of the members of the Lions Club. It was very quickly after I sent that email, and I only sent it to 7 individuals that were in my own address book. So be very careful. Look at email addresses. If something seems to be fishy, just definitely scrutinize it, because at first glance it really looked like my email address. It was very similar. It was m.dodd.cityofbellbrook@gmail. So it was very closely replicated to my email in an attempt to get people to send eBay gift cards to an individual. So I did alert the police department to that as well. So, and I alerted Google to that for what it was worth. So just be careful, and that's all I have for now.
Yeah, Melissa, one comment and follow-up to that is that I know that President Trump signed the CARES Act, I believe, this evening. I think there is a payment to various citizens of a certain amount of money, depending upon their income levels. And in that regard, keep in mind the IRS will not call you, nor will they email you with regard to requesting any information. Anything you get from the IRS regarding the payment or your taxes in general will come through the U.S. postal system. They do not email and they don't call you. So if anyone calls or emails you, make sure you don't respond, and in fact call the Bellbrook police and make sure that they're aware of it. Any questions of the city manager?
Melissa, how's the new regulation going? Businesses pretty much complying with a lot of that stuff?
Yeah, we have not received very many complaints. I mean, they come through here and there, and we definitely have reached out and had contact with anybody that we thought was appropriate. So we have not received very many complaints at all. We have received a few, and the police chief has reached out on his own, and I know that I've had some outreach as well, and I mean, everybody seems to be complying for the most part. I mean, you're always going to have little hiccups as people are trying to adjust to these types of things, and especially with these extreme orders that have come down. I mean, it's taken some adapting for people, but for the most part, everybody seems to be following all of the orders and doing a pretty good job of it.
Now, are we enforcing the curfew? We do have a lot of school kids out and about.
We are really trying to minimize first responder contact, just as a guideline. I know that as City Council sees the Crime Watch report, I know that just the last one that I sent out, I believe that there were some underage folks that were in a car at a park, and the police department did make contact and, told them to go home. So, I mean, it does still happen, but, they've really been encouraged to try to just use good judgment in terms of personal contact when they do have to do it. So, I haven't heard of any issues related to curfew. Doesn't mean that they don't exist, but they haven't been pushed up to my level.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions of the city manager? Elaine, Ernie, David, Nick?
Nope.
Any other matters that should be come before the council this evening in an abbreviated fashion? Seeing none, I declare this meeting adjourned.